Welcome back. In our last explainer, we dove into this idea of an inner mycelium, that deep, intuitive network that's inside all of us. But here's a thought. What if that network isn't just a single path? What if it's this sprawling, incredible field of possibilities? Well, today, that's exactly what we're exploring, the Quantum Mycelium Field. This quote from the amazing mycologist Paul Stamets is really our launch pad. Now, yeah, he's talking about mushrooms, but he's also pointing to something much deeper, a fundamental pattern of life itself, resilience through connection. It's a pattern you can see out in the cosmos and, as we're about to find out, right inside you. You know, we're all kind of taught the same story, right? You're born, you go to school, you get a job, and so on. It's presented as this single, straight line. But what if that's just not true? What if that entire model is actually holding us back from the branching, exploratory way that reality itself seems to work? Okay, so here's our game plan for today. We're going to start by really challenging that whole single life path idea. Then we'll look at how nature and our own brains and even a really cool metaphor from quantum physics can show us a different way. We'll get into how we actually choose our own timeline, and then we'll wrap up with a little preview of what happens when these inner networks get damaged. So let's just completely reframe how we see our own potential. Forget the straight line. I want you to picture a forest floor, just humming with unseen connections and infinite possible pathways. Just think about it for a second. The person you could become if you moved to that new city, the career you could have if you finally learned that new skill, the relationships you could build. These aren't just silly daydreams. They are real, potential branches in the network of your life, and they're just waiting for you to give them your energy and your attention. Okay, so how does this whole thing work in practice? Well, let's look to nature. Let's look at the incredible intelligence that's literally operating right under our feet to see how it decides where to grow next. As we've talked about, mycelium is the underground body of a fungus, but it's so much more than that. It's a biological internet. It's like a distributed consciousness. And its network design, well, that turns out to be a universal template for all kinds of complex adaptive systems. And this is where it gets really fascinating. Mycelium doesn't just grow in one direction. No, it sends out millions of tiny exploratory threads in every direction all at once. It's like it's running countless experiments at the same time. When one of those threads finds something good, some nutrients, the whole network sends it more energy, reinforcing that path. And if a path leads to a dead end, it just pulls back its resources. It's a living, breathing probability engine. So this brings us to a really critical question. If this is how nature explores all the possibilities, does our own mind work in a similar way? I mean, think about it. Every single time you weigh a decision or just daydream about what could be, what are you doing? You're running a simulation. Your mind is sending out these exploratory threads, creating potential timelines just to see how they feel. And our brains have this incredible, almost unbelievable capacity for new connections. Just look at studies on psilocybin, for instance. They show this dramatic explosion in communication across totally different parts of the brain. This hyperconnected state proves our minds aren't rigid at all. We have this vast untapped potential to create brand new pathways, new ways of thinking, to literally rewire our own inner networks. So as your brain is exploring all these potential futures, how in the world do you choose? Well, that's where your intuition comes in. Remember that from last time? It's the core sense of your inner mycelial network. It's that gut feeling, that deep knowing that tells you, yeah, this path, this one feels right. It feels alive and aligned with who you really are. Now, to really wrap our heads around this idea of pure, open potential, we can borrow a concept from physics. And listen, this is really crucial. We're using this as a powerful metaphor, a kind of poetic tool. This isn't a literal scientific claim. Okay, so here's the analogy. In quantum mechanics, before it's observed, a particle exists in this sort of cloud of probabilities. It's called a superposition of all its possible states. In a similar way, before you commit your energy and focus, your life exists in a superposition of potential futures. You are the artist, you are the scientist, the lover, the leader, you're all of them at once, in potential. So, when Paul Stamets uses a phrase like quantum leap, he's really using the language of physics to describe a profound shift in our awareness. It's about waking up to this field of infinite possibility and recognizing our power to navigate it consciously. And that leads us to the most important question of all, doesn't it? If we exist in this superposition of possibilities, how do we make one of them our actual lived reality? I mean, how do we choose? You don't just wish a new reality into existence, you build it. You build it through consistent reinforcing behaviors. And just like that mycelium strengthens a path to nutrients, you strengthen a timeline with these 4 things: your attention, what you focus on over and over; your action, what you repeatedly do; your belief, what you permit yourself to think is possible for you; and finally, repetition, the habits that actually build your identity. This is how you carve a new pathway into your life. A perfect real-world example of this is the actor Matthew McConaughey. For years, he was the rom-com king. That was his strong, well-fed timeline. But he wanted something more. So he made a conscious choice to starve that branch. He stopped giving it his attention. He stopped taking those actions. He turned down huge paychecks for almost 2 years. And that pruning, that clearing of the old path, allowed a new, more dramatic branch to grow, which led to an Oscar and a completely reinvented career. And that's really the key takeaway here. You are the gardener of your own inner mycelial network. The paths you water are the ones that grow. Where you place your focus, that becomes your reality. Potential becomes actual through your deliberate, repeated choices. So we have this incredible power to cultivate our inner world. But what happens when that world gets wounded? What happens when the network itself gets sick? You know, life isn't always about choosing between a bunch of good options. Sometimes our network gets damaged by trauma. These experiences can create what you might call sick branches, these patterns of fear or anger or limitation that just drain energy from the whole system, almost like a dark, parasitic fungus. And that's the question we're going to tackle in our next explainer. How does trauma really affect our inner network? And how can we begin to heal those damaged parts of ourselves? How can we regrow that vibrant, healthy forest within? Join us next time to find out.